All right, let's expand the conversation. We speak to Sherwin, who joins us from New York. Sherwin, a very good evening to you. More than 60 million votes already cast, irrespective of the garbage talk, but polls that shows a dead heat beat between Vice President Harris and former President Trump, which begs the question, what will this election come down to?
Yeah, we're losing our minds a little, Paul, with all the polling that has come out in just the last few weeks, because a narrative, it's not really framing the narrative anyway, other than we really don't know what is going to happen on election day. The polls either give Harris a national advantage by 1 or 2 points, or sometimes it shows a dead heat, like 48%, 48%. Similarly, in the swing states, right, your Wisconsins, your Pennsylvanias, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, neck and neck, either Donald Trump with a 1 to 2% advantage or Kamala Harris. So the question really is, what is going to make the difference? And that's really going to be the ground game of both campaigns. Are they going to be able to inspire and get their base and their supporters, those swing voters in particular, that are really going to determine which candidate gets over the finish line first? But the margins are going to be very slim. What are the big issues that are driving people to the polls in this election cycle? Is it the economy, right? High inflation, which has come down, but people still feel that their pocketbooks, their checkbooks are not going far enough, right? The cost of living remains very high for far too many people in this country, and I think reflected by a sentiment around the world, in fact. Is it going to be reproductive rights and access to abortion? Is it going to be immigration, illegal immigration, border security that drives people to the polls? Is it going to be seeking to safeguard America's democracy, right? A lot of people talk about how Trump and his perspective is a threat to the values that undergird the America that we know. Is it going to be misogyny that drives men to the polls who do not believe a woman should lead and should be commander-in-chief? Or are we going to get an avalanche of progressive voters, young people in particular, women in particular, really coming to the fore and swaying this election, perhaps in Kamala Harris's favor? These are the elements, right? When we talk about an electorate in the United States, we are talking about a very diverse group of people with a lot of diverse interests. And I think this is reflected, for example, in the vote in Michigan, which is one state, which is one key swing state. It has a high concentration of Arab American voters in Michigan that, of course, have a very particular perspective as it relates to the war in Gaza and America's foreign policy. How are those voters going to break in terms of Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? This is the view of two voters from Michigan, both Arab Americans. Let's listen to what they had to say.
1,000,000% I'm not voting for Harris because she's in a genocide. She's supporting the funding. She goes on public TV. They send text messages saying, I'm pro-Israel, I'm supporting Israel. They're saying, I'm supporting the killing of your people. Why would I vote for her? I voted for her and Biden 4 years ago. Now I feel guilty. Never again I'm voting for. Probably Democrats are pro-war. This is the history of Democrats. They like war. I'm not voting for Democrats anymore, for sure.
I think mostly what I hear from people is they feel hopeless. They feel like no matter who they vote for, they're not going to see the change that they need in policies from either the Trump or Harris administration. It's unfortunate that these are the choices that we have, but these are what's presented in front of us.
So we know that a Washington Post poll, which is out this week, shows that some 57% of swing state voters are somewhat concerned that Trump supporters may resort to violence if he loses the election, while similarly, some 31% believe that Harris supporters may resort to violence. The numbers that speak to broad anxiety permitting this election cycle. What more can you tell us about this?
So this survey was conducted at the beginning of October. Some 5,000 voters were surveyed across 6 battleground slash swing states and Paul. And what it shows is, let me just reiterate what you just said, 57% are very or somewhat worried that Trump supporters would resort to violence if he loses. 31% think Harris voters would resort to violence if she loses. 66%, some two-thirds of that 5,000 surveyed, are not confident Trump will accept a loss, and some 69% view Harris as accepting defeat. And what informs this kind of perspective, right? Look back no further than the last presidential election in 2020, which Donald Trump lost, went to court multiple times. Some 60 court cases were dismissed for a lack of evidence in terms of his fictitious claims of election fraud, and he of course incited his supporters that eventually rioted and stormed the US Capitol on the 6th of January 2021. I mean, take a step back and just think about the country we're talking about here, and the risk of violence. Ronald Reagan at some point referred to the United States as that shining city on a hill, and what Donald Trump was able to do right after the 2020 election is essentially burn that ideology to the ground by sending his supporters to the United States Capitol in a very violent rejection of what was a free and fair election. There's a new report that came out from a group called the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. They released a report this week, and I'll just read you a little bit of their preface. Once again, we are seeing the same warning signs of political violence based on election denialism combined with violent language across fringe platforms that we saw in the weeks before the 2020 election and before January 6, 2021. Online chat on fringe platforms like Telegram, a platform called Gab, Communities.win, and Fediverse are signaling a potential for political violence following the upcoming election. And what is this essentially borne out? It's the rhetoric that is coming out of the Trump campaign, and Donald Trump in particular, casting aspersions about the electoral process, refusing to say whether he will accept the outcome of the election. His response to those questions is, we'll wait and see. And so the concern is, if Donald Trump were to lose, history shows us that he will not accept that defeat. And you can point very much to the last election, where to this day, Donald Trump has still not conceded that he lost that election to Joe Biden in 2020.
So Sherwin, we also know that the presidency will be decided essentially by who wins the Electoral College. Of course, that's one element. I'd like you to perhaps remind us exactly how that works, and then more broadly, but also touch on how this is an election that just goes beyond just this presidency. Not so.
Yeah, so we focus, right, certainly from an international perspective, on who will win the White House, right? Is it Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? But this is an election that has many down ballot races. All 435 members of Congress, members of the House of Representatives, will be on the ballot. A third of the 100-member Senate will be on the ballot. So what's at stake here is not only the White House, but control of the House of Representatives and control of the Senate. And why does that matter? Because if one party, say the Republicans, retake the White House, you would like at the Democratic Party to have some sort of check on that power. So you want to then win one of the chambers where you can sort of be a buffer to the power that, for example, if the Republican Party were to win all three spheres of government, be that the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the White House, that gives them a lot of power to dictate policy in the United States. So this is not just an election focused on the White House. It's very much focused on congressional races and about a third of U.S. Senate races for control of those chambers. The Electoral College is, of course, this very obtuse, archaic system that reflects the representation of the number of congressional seats in the United States Congress and basically the House of Representatives and the Senate. So as you have 538 members represented there, you also have 538 Electoral College votes. The Electoral College votes are divided between the various states, reflective in those various states by their congressional representation. What we know is that certain states traditionally vote blue, Democrat, and certain states traditionally vote red, Republican. So the two candidates in this election can essentially say, I know I'm going to win New York because it traditionally goes blue, and Texas goes traditionally red, so Donald Trump can bank Texas. That only gets either candidate to so many Electoral College votes. Out of the 538, up for grabs. Your threshold for victory is 270. So you need, Paul, the swing states. That's why we talk about the Wisconsins, the Michigans, the Pennsylvanians, and the like. You need those states to add to the ones that you can bank. Your New York or your Maine or your Massachusetts, if you're a Democrat, or your Mississippi, Alabama, and Texas. You need those swing states to get you over 270. That's why in the closing 5 days of this race, you will hear only that candidates are spending their time in the swing states, because it's the swing states that are going to get you above 270 and therefore to win the White House.
Interesting dynamics. Of course, they're keeping a very close eye on the live blow-by-blow developments around the U.S. elections. Sherwin, thank you very much, as we, of course, continue to bring viewers up to speed with the latest on the ground there. Sherwin Bryce-Pease reporting live from New York, giving us those updates. We do continue on the other side of this to bring you more news. Stay with us.